Stephen Miller, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, is here with me now. Stephen, thanks very much for being in the arena.
Glad to. Thank you.
So you called the judge's order just earlier today, quote, patently unlawful, end quote, and said that it was an assault on democracy itself. Does that mean that the administration is ignoring this order, and might you ignore future court orders that meet the criteria you laid out?
The President of the United States and his administration reserve all rights under the Constitution to conduct national security operations in defense of the United States. The Alien Enemies Act, which was passed into law by the founding generation of this country, men like John Adams, was written explicitly to give the President the authority to repel an alien invasion of the United States. That is not something that a district court judge has any authority whatsoever to interfere with, to enjoin, to restrict, or to restrain any way. You can read the law yourself. There's not one clause in that law that makes it subject to judicial review, let alone district court review.
So, Stephen, when you say that this person has no authority at all, this is how our system works. It starts with these judges and then continues up. At what point does it become, in your view, legal for the justice system to be looking at this and making a judgment? And I fail to see how there's any other way but to start with where we're starting here before you get to eventually the Supreme Court.
Well, so first of all, there's a term in law, justiciable. This is not justiciable. In other words, this is not subject to judicial remedy. When the president is exercising his Article II powers to defend the country against an invasion or to repel a foreign terrorist that is unlawfully in the country, he's exercising his core Article II powers as commander-in-chief.
Is Venezuela invading the U.S.?
This is a very important point. This is a Title 50 authority. It's a commander-in-chief authority. So just to ask you a simple question, you talk about how the system works. Does a district court judge have the right to direct or enjoin troop movements overseas? Yes or no?
Well, Stephen, my question, if you could answer my question first,
in other words,
is Venezuela invading our country in a way that would apply this way?
So I'll answer yours and you'll answer mine. Under the terms of the statute, Tren de Aragua is an alien enemy force that has come here as detailed at length in the proclamation at the direction of the Venezuelan government. The statute says that a president has the ability to repel an invasion or predatory incursion that is directed by a foreign government.
By a state or a government, right? Are they a state or a government?
This would be, yes, it is documented that TDA was sent by the Venezuelan government in the proclamation. And here's an even more important point. Under the Constitution, who makes that determination? A district court judge elected by no one, or the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy? The president and the president alone makes a decision of what triggers that determination.
So do you then think we are actually at war with Venezuela, the nation state of Venezuela?
You're not hearing me and you're not understanding me. Read the statute, Alien Enemies Act, 1798. It says if a predatory incursion is perpetrated by a foreign government, so it lists three qualifying actions. It could be an act of war.
It does say in the very beginning there has to be a declared war against a nation or a state. That's what it says.
No, wrong. Look up the statute. It's on my account on social media.
That's actually where we found it earlier.
Yes, it says or a predatory incursion or an invasion. The statute delineates three criteria for triggering the Alien Enemies Act. One is an act of war, which, by the way, an invasion is an act of war, but put that aside. One is an invasion, which this is. One is a predatory incursion, which this is. So it actually meets all three statutory criteria. But with respect to this particular statute, the proclamation is utilizing the incursion and invasion language in the statute.
So,
but this is a very important question, because no, hold on. It's a very important question. You said the way our system works is the President of the United States commands the armed forces of the country, commands the foreign policy of the country, and that's subject to district court review. That is fundamentally untrue.
I never said that, Stephen. I did not say.
That has never been true.
This was not a military operation.
A district court judge can no more enjoin the expulsion of foreign terrorists to foreign soil, that he can direct the movement of Air Force One, that he can direct the movement of an aircraft carrier, then he can direct Marco Rubio to
Okay,
engage
do you
in
think the
diplomacy
Supreme
in a
Court
country
has any
or
say
not
over
to.
this or not? Like, does the Supreme Court of the United States have any say over the things that you were just outlining right here?
I believe what the Supreme Court will say is what I just said, which is that the president's conduct here is not subject to judicial
Okay, but
review.
you are
because these
acknowledging
are
that
the plenary,
they do, in fact,
these are
have a
the-
say
the-
here,
Well,
even
what
though you
we
think
are-
they may agree with you.
what we are expecting is the Supreme Court to say what has always been the case, which is when the president is using his powers as commander-in-chief, those determinations are not subject to judicial review. In other words, the president's designation of Tren Darwagwa as a foreign terrorist organization and as an alien enemy are part of his inherent plenary authority. There is
So
no way.
at what point in the
there is
system,
no way.
Stephen,
how
do
are you
the
going to
courts
expel?
gain
Hold
power?
on. How are you going to expel illegal alien invaders from our country who are raping little girls, who are murdering little girls, if each and every deportation has to be adjudicated in a district court judge? That means you have no country, it means you have no sovereignty, it means you have no future. It is fundamentally incompatible to have a country and have individual expulsions adjudicated by a single district court judge.
I'm just trying to figure
It is
out at what point in the
impossible.
system do you, because what does the Trump administration believe? Because we do have separation of powers in this country. I hear what you're saying. You're
Yes,
saying the
separation of
district
powers.
court does
This
not
is the
have
judiciary
authority.
interfering
Stephen,
in
let me finish.
the executive function.
Let me
That is the
finish.
separation
Okay.
of powers. That is the
Did
separation
you
of
ignore
powers.
the judge's order here because you thought you could?
So the judge's order and the actions taken by the Departments of Defense, Justice, and Homeland Security are not in conflict. And the Department of Justice has been clear that they are not in conflict. But
So
I'm
you
making a
think
more
that you did
fundamental
go
point.
along with the order that the judge put out? You do not think that the Trump administration
As the-
defied this order?
As the Justice Department said, there is no conflict between the judge's order and the actions taken by the departments I just listed. But I'm making a deeper and more fundamental point.
Yeah.
The district
so,
court
yeah, I mean, if you
has
don't have
no
to follow it, why
ability.
didn't you?
The district court has no ability to in any way restrain the president's authorities under the Alien Enemies Act or his ability to conduct the foreign affairs of the United States. Let me paint a picture for you. President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio had engaged in intensive diplomacy to obtain a bilateral security agreement with the nation of El Salvador. If a district court judge can
again,
enjoin that bilateral security agreement, then we do not
I
have
get
a
it.
democracy.
Stephen, you've made your argument.
We do not
I
have
got
a
it.
foreign policy.
We've heard you say this.
I've-
Did you ignore, did the administration ignore the order from the district judge? It's a simple question.
I've answered, and I've answered it. I've answered it because the Department of Justice has made a filing in the court. But let me make another point. The judge, in this case, put the lives of every single person on those aircraft at risk. Did he know how much fuel was in those planes? Did he know the flight conditions? Did he know the weather conditions? Did he know how many crew hours? Did he know the need for crew rest? Did he know any of that? No. This judge violated the law. He violated the Constitution.
So do
he
you
defied
think that
the system of government that we have in this country.
Because that does seem
And
to
by
be
the
what
way,
you're arguing here.
these same district court judges didn't do a damn thing to stop Joe Biden from flooding this nation with millions of illegal aliens. Do these district court judges didn't issue any injunctions to save the lives of Jocelyn
Is the
Nungary
White
or
House
Laken
above
Riley or
the
anyone
federal
else?
courts? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that what you said, there's a separation of powers. The judiciary exercises judgment and relief.
I don't speak for the White House. You are here to speak
I
for
will
the,
do.
You're here to speak for
Then
the
I
White
will-
House.
then I will
I
wa-
just
I
want
will
you to
walk you
answer
through
that
it.
one simple question.
I
okay?
am. Ready? Here we go. Under a proper reading of the Constitution, district court judges provide relief to individual plaintiffs seeking relief. District court judges do not have the authority, as a general matter, to enjoin the functioning of the executive branch. But their authority is at its lowest point when the president is exercising his powers as commander-in-chief. And I asked you a question, you never answered it. Can a judge enjoin troop movements overseas? Can a district court judge enjoin troop movements overseas?
Stephen,
yes or no?
I am not going to get into the
Just say no, and then you'll know that I'm right.
This is a
Just
separate
say no,
question,
and you'll know that
Stephen.
I'm right.
Okay, we're not
No,
talking
it's
about
not.
other
Because
troops
the
overseas.
president,
I need to ask you about
it's
something
not.
else
The
that's
president
important.
issued a proclamation delineating in detail how the Venezuelan regime sent this gang, this terrorist organization, to our shores. And by the way, and I love being here, but all the outrage that we are seeing from the Democrat Party and from the corporate media, none of that outrage was expressed when little Jocelyn Nungare was tortured and beaten
Stephen,
to death. None of that outrage was
I am not
expressed
here, and
when our nation was
this
flooded
is-
by
this
illegal
is-
aliens.
I have just been simply trying to get a simple answer to a simple question. No
And I'm
outrage
glad for the
necessary
opportunity, and I'm
about whether
glad
or
for-
not
well,
the White House is ahead of the
But I
courts.
am.
But
Okay,
I need
you know
to,
what?
I need to
I am
ask you
outraged.
one more
I
question.
am
I'm going to
outraged
have
that
to let you go.
Democrats defending Trinidad instead of celebrating President Trump expelling these terrorists from our midst. And I'm glad for the opportunity to explain how the separation of powers does work. If the
Okay.
president has to litigate every national security action with 700
So-
district court judges, then we don't have a
Let me
functioning
ask
democracy.
you one other question about the president's power today. It's on a slightly different topic, but we saw President Trump's comments about the use of the auto pen, the pardons that President Biden signed. And I just want to know from you, has President Trump ever used an auto pen to sign official documents, either in his first term or since he took office a second time?
Well, I've seen President Trump hand sign every executive order my whole time, and every pardon
you ever seen him
my
use
whole
an
time
auto pen?
working for him. But President Trump signs every single critical government function document. But here's the more important point about that, even more important. The more important point is that President Trump personally directs every single federal government policy.
Right, but has
President
he ever
Trump
signed anything
personally
with an auto
directs-
pen?
To my knowledge, every single executive order, every single proclamation, every single major government action, every single thing that affects the lives, safety, and livelihoods of the American people that comes out of the executive office of the president, he has signed. But more importantly, he has directed,
signed without
he
the
has
auto pen.
briefed, he has
Okay.
been involved in. And this is the most important point. It's not just that Joe Biden used the auto pen. It's that he didn't know it. He was not briefed on it. He was not aware of it. He did not approve it. He was not mentally aware of what the government was doing.
If we're
It was
talking about the legality of something
conducted
signed with an
by-
auto pen or not, I'm just trying to figure out if
Right,
there's
but
anything
the key
President
point,
Trump
the
signed.
key point is
that
no,
feels
but
that.
you're missing
Stephen,
it.
I'm
You're
so
missing
sorry
it. It's
we're
not
running
just
out
about
of
the
time
auto
here. I
pen.
do appreciate
It's
how
that
much time
Biden
you have spent
didn't
with
know
me, though.
what was being signed in his name.
All right.
That's the
I
key
understand.
point.
I understand what you are saying.